Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Nucleus Investment Insights. Today's episode is called Disruption. Which sectors are most at risk from AI advances? ChatGPT has taken the internet by storm. Today, we're going to look at this amazing new technology, its many uses, and we'll discuss how it's going to change the world. One recent example is researchers got ChatGPT to take the bar exam in the US. It scored 297, which places it in the 90th percentile of human test takers. This would allow it to be admitted to practice law in most US states. It's only in its infancy, but the applications are far and wide-ranging, with likely many of its uses still undiscovered. If you don't know what this is, it's time to find out. Come on the journey with us today as we enlighten you to the relevance of ChatGPT, not just for your investments, but for your life. Today, as always, we have Damien Klassen, Nucleus Wealth Chief Investment Officer. Damo, welcome.
Thanks, Sam.
Good to be here. My name's Sam Kerr. I'm the Senior Financial Advisor at Nucleus Wealth. Just a reminder, the information in this podcast is general advice and does not take into account your personal situation. If you do want to discuss your personal financial situation, please go to our website at nucleuswealth.com/contact and you can book a call with me and we can have a chat. We are live every Thursday at 12:30 Sydney, Melbourne time. So jump onto the Nucleus Wealth YouTube channel and you can ask any questions that come to mind and we'll do our best to answer them during the show. You can also follow us on your preferred podcast platform as our show is available on all the majors. So Damo, I'll hand it over to you to get us started on this very interesting topic.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So look, it's obviously hit all the headlines, and I guess what we wanted to do is sort of bring back how we're looking at it from an investment perspective, because it is a big change for a number of industries. It's both extremely new and very embryonic, but also moving very quickly, and so and with the potential for quite large amounts of disruption. So yeah, I just want to sort of talk a little bit at first about what it is, what are some of the key breakthroughs that we've seen recently, and why we're seeing such a significant pickup in the use of it at the moment, and then move on to which of the sectors we think are going to be most affected by it. So we'll start with the what is it, and particularly there's a whole bunch of different types of machine learning out there, and they're all with different styles and uses and reasons for wanting to use one over another in particular scenarios. The one that's really hit us recently is these large language models, and basically in the end, there's a research paper out there talking about them being stochastic parrots, which is a very I guess it's probably a pretty good analogy in my view about how they're effectively doing it is they're saying, well, if you see these number of words together, what's the next most likely word you're going to see, and what are clusterings of words that give meaning to things, and so if I want to talk about if I want to reword something, if I can flip these words around, does it still mean the same thing, and that understanding about that type of thing, and I guess putting things into context by what it's learnt on the internet about these topics often appear together, and so these large language models have sort of hit a certain point at the moment where ChatGPT, as you spoke about, is a pretty key one that's come out. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail, but there's also been a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning languages really benefit from human guidance as well. And so that helps to really train them. And so Google's been benefiting for this for a long time in terms of people typing stuff into their search box, and then Google can look and work out what do they, after they've typed in a question, which ones do they ignore, and which ones do they actually click on, because that sort of gives them a much better guide as to what people are really looking for, and they can gradually filter out the ones that people are ignoring, and it helps to give some sense of relevance. ChatGPT's now got this same benefit in terms of they did a lot of their own human guiding in earlier stages, but now they've got such a huge user base that effectively when the ChatGPT is being asked to do something, and then it spits out an answer. They've got this huge user base of people who are now going, that's wrong or that's right, or regenerate that because I wanted to see something different. And that really gives you this this snowball effect of becoming much better, much faster. And a good way of sort of a good analogy of this is the way that young children will learn is that they'll sort of try out language, and as they try out the language, they'll learn that my mum and dad react well when I do this, and they react poorly when I do this other one. And so certainly in their earlier stages, they go lean to the ones the parents react well with. I'm sure once you get teenagers, they react the other way, but that's a different story. But that whole idea about getting that human guidance and getting people using it is really what's been some of the key stuff at the moment. What is important to note as well, though, is some of the issues in terms of they're very much black boxes. A lot of these, a lot of this machine learning can tell you what can give you an answer, but often it's actually hard to work out why they've come up with this answer. A good example of some of the things that have gone wrong with some of these was some hiring processes. That's often one. It's been an earlier use of some of these where basically you feed in everyone's CVs into the machine, and the machine spits out which CVs you should give an interview to. So if you've had 1,000 applications for a job role, it's actually saying, okay, which ones of these are going to be likely to succeed or not. And there was one model in particular that I guess basically had learnt that the company that was hiring people tended to like to hire to white males. And so whereas that's not a field it was allowed to make a judgment on, and in terms of hiring, it had worked out that if it picks people named Jaden who were also lacrosse players, then chances are you'd manage to find somebody like that. And so that was its bias, was if your name was Jaden and you were a lacrosse player, you got an interview regardless of whether you had the qualifications or not, because that's what the AI had worked out was equivalent to a hiring decision. And so there's things like that where it's about saying, well, no, we want to try and you can throw things at some of these black box models, but we need to acknowledge that they've got a lot of limitations. They can come out with very convincingly worded wrong information. So you can type stuff into these, and plenty of experts have found that you type it in, and it comes out with this answer that to a layperson sounds like it's perfectly right and correct and everything like that, but it's actually completely wrong. But it's using enough of terminology that it can fool people. So
and Damo, I mean, the technology, it's just in its infancy, so it's still relatively new. And
yes.
ChatGPT, for example, it's only up to 2021. So for viewers that are really brand new to this technology, on like Google, you type in a question and it points you to websites with the right answer. Whereas with ChatGPT, for example, you type in a question and it'll give you the answer rather than pointing you to a website. And there's so many functions that it's capable of. And you say it does come back with some things that are not correct, but it also comes back with some amazing things. Like you can ask it to write you an essay on the history of whatever, and it'll come back and give you some pretty amazing answers. So
yeah, no, it's very good. And actually, yeah. So I guess I might be overplaying some of the problems, but as you said, the amount of time it's right is far more than it's wrong, and it's this little bit of danger that we're still in, where if something's right 90-80% of the time, you're sort of like, oh, I'll just assume it's right all the time, and you're like, well, no, there's still 2% of the time, and it can be off by 180 degrees. So there's a question about what you want to be using it for and how it's being used, but there's certainly some really big productivity improvements coming out of this.
And if you're asking it a question, you can ask it to reference for you as well, just so you know.
That's right.
You gotta add that little bit in as well.
Yeah, and it can come up with fake references. There's a number of ones. Yeah, there's a number of examples of referencing referencing research papers that just actually literally don't exist. And so yes, as with any human, humans can do exactly the same thing. And I think that's one of the key parts is going to be going forward is, faking experience in terms of you can use these tools to make it look like you have experience. And for people trying to work out whether say people in the investment industry do have genuine experience or not, it will be more difficult because the people they're writing this to can basically fake the experience. And the other one there's that it's got a little bit of head press recently is a number of prominent people talking about slowing down and the dangers of AI. And there is genuinely an issue is that that there's a process to consciousness that children go through in terms of asking questions, getting feedback, bouncing things off, and potentially some of this AI is on that same path, and we don't know how fast or slow it'll get there. It might be that it'll take hundreds of years to get to the point where it can learn upon itself and become sentient, or it might take hundreds of days. We really don't know, and what the implications are. And so and within that, we don't know. There's a great example of and this was a while ago, so 6 or 7 years ago. Microsoft released a chatbot onto Twitter, and with the view that this was it didn't really know much about the world, but it was going to use Twitter and talk to Twitter and find out about the world and become sort of a more rounded chatbot by doing it. And within a day, trolls had basically found it and taught it to be racist and sexist and all these things like that. And Microsoft actually pulled it down because of that. And so the issue is that sometimes these things people are going to try things on to see if they can break the models, and maybe that's not teaching things that they think, oh, wouldn't it be funny if we turn this thing into a racist? Well, there might be bigger implications for it sort of going down the line. But there are investment things coming out of this, and that's the key one, which we'll get into shortly. So to move on to that, it's a little bit obligatory when you're doing these that you've got to sort of come out and say, well, could ChatGPT have written this presentation for us? And it certainly could have given it a go. Here's just an example from ChatGPT of saying, write me a presentation about sectors most at risk, and that's come out with this presentation and spoken of, given us slide 1 and the introductions and healthcare sectors and a little bit of text about that, and then moved on to the next slide and spoken about manufacturing issues and transport and financial. So it's it's done a pretty reasonable job of going through and talking about which of the sectors and identifying some things. And I guess think about this as it's what it's effectively done really is trawled the internet pre 2001 and looked for people who have written articles about these and tried to summarize it and bring them together. And so and it's done a very good job of it. And so the idea is if you've got tasks that are about producing content for sorry, let me put it another way. I think there's going to be a content explosion over these types of things where people are like, well, think of a web page that people might type in and go and write something up on that so that you'll rate higher on SEO and things like that. That's going to be way easier, or it is way easier now with all these AI tools that can just write these things for you, summarize a bunch of other articles. As people say that if you take if you're doing research and you copy from one person, that's plagiarism. If you copy from 6 different people and merge them together, that's research. And effectively, that's what these things are doing is merging it through. So anyways, that's a little bit of background about AI, but let's jump into the more important stuff, I guess, after Sam, if you want to, I'll hand to you for a quick message.
We'll be back with the investment insights very shortly. Nucleus Wealth is an active and passive investment manager. If you like what you're hearing and want some help with your investing, we can do it for you via our active portfolios. Our tactical and core portfolios use the insights shared in this podcast to construct and manage your investment. We blend tactical portfolios to offer our combinations of international shares, Australian shares, government bonds, and cash. We vary the asset allocation with the goal of protecting your capital in times of market uncertainty. We also have active international and Australian share portfolios. These are chosen using our quality and value investment philosophy. You can find out more at nucleuswealth.com. Now back to the show.
So the key thing for that you really want to keep in mind, I guess, is that there's been a number of breakthroughs. In particular, ChatGPT has been the biggest one, and really, it's the biggest breakthrough, I guess, from a ChatGPT is interfacing and creating something that people are happy to use and gets back that answers quickly. Because the technology itself has been sort of growing for a number of years, and arguably that's the jump in ahead has really come because you've got so many more people using it, as opposed to there's been a massive underground movement. But getting these more people to use it, as I spoke, is now going to start this snowball happening of better results. We've got so the other one is Bard, which is the Google ones popping out as we speak in a number of different countries. It's worth noting that in terms of cloud computing, that's been a big help to these in terms of the improving the ability and the scalability, where people can throw lots of data at and lots of computation for a short period of time, and then just go back to the ongoing bit without having to spend massive amounts of money. So you can go through and train your models and do all the machine learning in a very intensive way, and then get back to what your rules are, and that part doesn't need to be as intense on a day-to-day basis. And the other thing is there's been a number of sort of chip designs that have come out and very much been in terms of optimized in terms of running a lot of these calculations, and Google itself's got a number of chipsets designed purely around the speed of actually coming back with these calculations. So that's sort of come out. Images has been a lot.
So Damo, are these ChatGPT? Are they designing new chips? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is there's been a number of chips designed over the last few years and are now in production and in use that have sped up the amount of processing you can do. So if you think about it as the old chips that we used to have were very good in terms of being generalists. They're very good at doing lots of different calculations, all at a pretty good speed. Mm-hmm. And what we've effectively done now with some of the chips that are ending up now have been specifically designed to be excellent at machine learning tasks and terrible at all these other tasks, but they're being put to use in terms of saying, they might run 20 times faster than one of the generalist machines. Generalist chips. And so the generalist chips might be great at doing a whole bunch of other things, and they're the ones you want to use for most applications. But if you're just doing machine learning, then these chips that sort of cost the same, but you can get 20 times the speed, you just can't use those chips for other tasks and that you might want to do, and to run your laptop and other things like that. They're just specially made specifically just for these machine learning tasks.
Yeah,
and that's
sorry, go on.
So I guess there's been some breakthroughs in terms of the speed at which people can process a lot of the data, and that then feeds upon what it's this sort of snowballing effect of the processing power has become more powerful, which then lets people do more things more quickly. And now you've opened it up to a whole bunch more people that have never used it before, but are now having the ability to use it and find different ways to do things. And so that's snowballing into more efficient chip design again, and all these other tasks that people just had never even thought of until you had a broader use of people using it.
And am I correct in understanding that it's scouring the internet for the answers, but then also as more people use it, it's learning from the inputs from those people as well?
Yeah, it is. And so so you're basically running and that's the large language model version. There are lots of other types of artificial intelligence and machine learning out there, but the large language one that's getting the most amount of press at the moment is that's the one. That's what it's learning from. Is effectively it's trying to predict, as I was saying before. It's basically trying to say, based on what you're looking for and what other people have written articles about and spoken about, this looks like the answer you want back. It's basically trying to predict what are the next words that you're going to see, and by having more and more people asking more and more questions, and then effectively telling it, is this the right answer or the wrong answer? That then helps it to learn even faster.
And do you think this technology, it's a competitor to traditional search engines, or is it a complement, or where do you think that's going to fit in that sort of ecosystem in the internet?
Yeah, good question. It's there's certain part of it which is like, okay, I'm looking for something. I'm looking to go and I'm looking for a website that does whatever, and so it's not going to replace that. It's like, okay, I want to go for a hike. Show me a bunch of places that can, where I can go hiking. It might be good at saying, oh, I'm looking to go for a hike around Melbourne. What are the places, and it might bring back some text for me to say here's a whole bunch of different places based on articles that people have written. But I guess the question about are they set up to give me a link to the latest websites that people have set up and things like that? No, they're not set up yet that way. And probably Google Bard will be more integrated into that type of thing. But it is more about giving you answers and helping your productivity workflow, I guess, in terms of the types of ones at the moment.
Yeah.
And the other thing to note is they're doing a lot on images and starting to get into video as well. So being able to say, create me an image of something, and a lot of art type ones where it's like, create me something that looks like a Picasso painting but has got my face in it, or whatever it is. That type of stuff has really has really exploded off as well. And they're not, you wouldn't say they're great at the moment, but they're pretty impressive relative to where it would have been 6 months ago or 12 months ago in terms of that type of thing.
And so do you think there's gonna, like it is early days, but do you think in the future there's gonna be one or lots of different sort of AI models for specific things rather than one, big behemoth like Google or ChatGPT? Like, do you think it's going to go off in that direction, or how do you view things playing out?
No, I think it's more, we're going to end up with, my expectation is we'll end up with a couple of big ones that are, and a little bit of this is that it might end up being one main one that sort of runs most of it, in that the person that collects more data will actually be more likely to end up with a better model. Because if I've got 1 billion people using my model and my competitor's only got 100 million, then I might be able to, with 1 billion people using it, I'm getting more responses, and I can improve it. I can improve it faster than the guy with only 100 million. So that there is that potential, but I do think we'll have at least a couple of big ones. I think in terms of, I think it will end up being that as you're asking questions or doing things, you'll find that it will divert you to different models itself. Like, I guess if there's a better model for running images, for example, it's like, well, I'm using a large language model to answer your question about write me a presentation on which sectors are going to outperform, and then I'm going to use a completely different one to go and generate images. And so, but that you won't see that. You won't have to go and sort of you won't have to go and say,
get a new one.
Tell you to use the image one. You just type in, can you write me a picture, draw me a picture that looks like this, or make me a photo that looks like this, and it will do that for you.
Yeah, and I know that quite a few companies have been implementing that already, like KPMG. So maybe there's obviously the business applications, and maybe it's just geared towards what they want it for. Whether it's legal or do you think they're gonna be able to have that sort of narrow scope, or they'll just use that?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's all you'll find is that you can use them already. Like if I'm and they're already set up like that. So if I want to say, I'm interested in I'm interested in writing me some content for my website, and I wanted something about this, go away and write it, and then it'll come back and give you that written stuff that you can just bang straight up on your website. But if I then say, actually, I know I need you to help me with my coding, can you write me can you have a look at my code and work out where the security flaws in it? It will use, it will do that for me. I don't have to say use your programming module to do this. That's it just works out. Okay, that's where I'm going to use for that one, and I'm going to use something different for the when we're writing the other one. So I don't think there's any. I think a general solution that uses specific parts will be part of the whole landscape. Yes. So, but maybe I'll jump in and do we'll talk a little bit about some of these industries, and I think it's probably the best place to go next. So which are the industries most at risk? And then we'll get on to some of the countries, and then finally we'll look at where what does that mean from an investment perspective that where we need to look for. So so the first thing in terms of industries most at risk, I'll start with the media sector. So I've spoken a little bit about that copywriting idea. Now I just want to give a big picture as well. How I'm looking at at all these tools is that these tools are not replacing humans at the apex, but they are replacing humans, that they're helpers. So I guess what I'm saying is this is a productivity tool. So if I'm looking to say, I want this to write me some content about, whatever it is, AI taking over. So I've asked, I showed you before that we can ask ChatGPT, go away and write this for me. And it can come back with some answers. But then, there's an element of going, well, I need to then, that might help me if I'm going, I just want to give me 80% of it, and then I'll go and fix it. I'll go and fix what you've got and write more and fix all that type of stuff. And so the person who's sort of running the person with the intellectual property and the ideas can now do that a lot easier. Whereas in the past, they might have had 3 or 4 assistants or an assistant somewhere, and they'd say to the assistant, I'll go away and write me something. Here's the bullet points, go and write it up, and then I'll come through and fix it. And so, and I guess that's what I'm saying within the media and in the advertising space, that's where they're at risk. That's a productivity gain in terms of the people doing that copywriting. Can these things take over completely? Well, no, because you still need somebody to direct it in terms of what are we actually doing here, and what are we writing about, and what are the things that, and maybe it might be the stage where these can give you suggestions about different things you can write about as well, but there's still a decision-making process somewhere in that.
And Damo, do you think it's a productivity gain and also a profit gain? Because is it going to mean they're going to need less people?
Let's come back to that. We'll come back to the profit later. Yeah. I've got a whole section on that whole profit part. So that's copywriting. There's similar in marketing. Marketing is more about, can we get more and more strategies to micro-target? And I think that's where a lot of this AI will be about saying, okay, well, based on where people have been on my website, or where they've clicked, or the type of person we think they are, now we can give them different marketing content. And rather than having to specifically design each one for each person, we can let the AI work out which is the most, appropriate strategy to use to different groups. So I think there's elements in that will again be a productivity gain in terms of the marketing side, and you'll lose some of the lower level marketing people within video, and there's lots of sort of the editing side of it. So if you hit the credits scene for your movies, and there's always 1,000 people there who've done a whole bunch of things within it, I think a lot of that's going to get a lot easier, and a lot of this AI will be about making all these video editing tasks simpler and simpler. And a lot of that is, being able to voice commands. Can you make this move faster, or slow it down, or make an explosion over here, or whatever it is? And those types of things are becoming available and coming along in leaps and bounds just over the last sort of 6 months. Music is similar. It's actually has a pretty good go at writing lyrics and songs. And so, do I think that there'll be, do I think we'll be listening to artificial music? Well, maybe to a certain extent, but there'll still be somebody behind deciding, I'm asking this, go and write me some songs that are like this, or whatever it is. And so, there's again a lower level of people who are behind the scenes at the moment who might have been doing a lot of these tasks and might get removed from it. But there's still some sort of creative thing sitting in the middle that, or at least making decisions about which artificially generated music that it likes and doesn't like, and then applying that to in terms of pushing that out. Within IT, I do very much think the coding side is a massive productivity gain in terms of, but I still think there's the element of the person who's writing the code to say, I want to write, it still needs to give direction. You can't just say, go and make me a website and make it hugely profitable and work really well and easily. We're not at that stage yet, and it's question is whether we will get to that stage. But the idea about saying, I want you to create something that does this, and here's the logic behind the flow within the programming, is what tends to happen is you'll have your higher level developers, and then they'll write the bulk, they'll write the overview and the 80% and get the logic and the flow. And then what they'll often do then is outsource a lot of that, or send down a lot of the more basic coding onto coders in often third world countries and places like India or similar places, where they'll actually go through and then say, okay, now I've written the most of this, go and code it so that whatever it's more secure. It's more secure. Go through and work out what all the security flaws could be, or go through and work out what are all the potential things that people could enter into it that would throw an error and code around those errors. Now that type of stuff, which is much lower level coding, I think a lot of that is going to disappear. And what it will be is the person writing that original code will be able to send to these and can already send to these, say, I've written my original code, go and find the security things in it and suggest fixes for it. And that it already comes back and goes, there they are. And then you go, oh, great, let me take those ones. Yeah, those ones work. Actually, that's going to create problems elsewhere. I won't put that one in. And so,
Damien, I think there's huge implications around this sort of IT and the coding, in terms of just, and like you mentioned before, an explosion of content out there. If a bot can write something that maybe took a team of people a week, if it can do it in a couple of hours or even shorter, the ability to just produce more content is massive, and the productivity of that as well. If you no longer need a team of people to create something that AI can essentially write with clear directions. Who knows where this is really going to lead us? We're in its infancy, and look at the internet now compared to early 2000s. It permeates every aspect of our life, and I think this technology has got that same potential. We're looking at it from the very, very start of it, and the potential is just massive.
Absolutely. But I guess that the prism I'm looking at it through at the moment is this is a productivity tool for people for the more competent people, or the more senior people within organizations at the moment is very much how I'm looking at most of these ones I've spoken about already. And that sort of goes onto the legal side as well. So once you start saying, well, in terms of lawyers, they spend a lot of their time, giving stuff to their paralegals and their assistants to say, go and write this up and check it and whatever. A lot of that stuff will now be able to be run through this AI side. And that's where, you still need that senior person. But the question is, rather than having 3 different assistants to do this stuff, maybe they only need 1 or 0.
Yeah, the sort of legal aspects, like I mentioned in the intro, with ChatGPT now passing the bar exam, and people that are research orientated, maybe analysts for stock analysts, maybe some of them might become redundant. People that are just research based.
Within the finance side, yeah. So the part here, though, is I'll jump to the finance one, because that was, I've said corporate finance. So corporate finance tends to consist of people trying to do deals to buy other companies, and a lot of it is writing presentations to justify why should you pay $1 billion for this company versus 1.5 or 1.2 or whatever it is, and go and find me comparables and all these things like that. And so there's a deal maker who's out there smoozing and connecting people and the big ideas, and they'll go back to their team of corporate finance people and say, yeah, okay, we want to get the deal done. I reckon they'll pay 1.2, so go write me up a justification, a whole bunch of slides and stuff. Now that role will be much easier. You still need that person connecting them, but that person will be able to do a lot of this stuff or they'll have an assistant, which is like, literally, go and write me a presentation around this, show me the comparables, do this, do whatever, and it will be productivity enhancements. So it's not like the computer's taking over and doing everything for us, but it is making the people who are making the decisions. And I need a 20-page slide deck to support this, or I've got my legal reasons behind it. Go and write me, go and find all the precedents and stuff like that. That stuff is where this artificial intelligence will really make people much more productive.
Yeah, and I heard someone. I was speaking with someone just the other day about this technology, and they used the term an input engineer, and I'd never heard that before. But I think what that means is whoever's the best at directing this AI technology, or can give it the sort of clearest directions, will be the people that really benefit the most from this technology.
Yeah, I can see that. But by the same token, I think what we'll see is that in the same way that, and I guess a good example, that people ran through was the idea of this calculational issue where, for the military, back in the 50s and 40s and 50s, and the idea was that they needed to work out trajectories and all these types of things, and so they had a whole team of people whose job was to sit there and calculate things. And then the person was still at the top saying, I want to calculate the trajectory of try to hit this target or whatever. And all these people go away and do the base calculations, and then they come back and give the answers. And then that was replaced by computers. I don't need that anymore. I can feed it in, and I just need one person to go, yes, feed in, give me the answer and tell me where to shoot. And I think that's the type of thing where some of these is, you've got your lawyer and he's basically come up with the overall arguments and the reasoning behind it. He's like, right, I need a whole bunch of precedents, and I need to go and check this and check for flaws in the contract or whatever it is, and gives it to their paralegals. That type of stuff can be done now through this AI or this corporate finance. And so it's not about saying, it's about making people who are doing these tasks much more productive. And yes, you lose a lot of staffing within that. And so there's issues within there, but I think the jobs that are being lost are often the more junior jobs, and the ones that are in the end adding a lot less value. And so the question will be, how do we get the more senior people through? And that's going to be a problem for a lot of industries, because at least with the lawyers, you go, yes, I can bring on 1,000 of these, and a whole bunch of them aren't going to work out. But if they're going to see the cream rise to the top, and those ones will eventually become leaders of their own. You're saying, well, if you're not bringing 1,000 people through, if you're only bringing 50 people through now, how do you make sure that you actually manage to get the people that are going to be the leaders? And so, yes, lots of questions behind that, but I'll leave that for later, because I do want to get onto the investment part as well. So I'll run quickly through some of these other ones. Transport. So 3 or 4 different types there. One of the big ones, logistics. So the whole the traveling salesman problem is a difficult one, and trying to stack ships and stack and organize most efficient paths and all these types of things are all very difficult problems. I think AI will be excellent at AI is excellent at solving a lot of these problems and coming up with solutions that are unexpected and more efficient. So there's already stuff going on with logistics, and that's going to improve dramatically. The whole self-driving, well, it's already been affected by this. We've already gone from using taxis and people wondering where to go to Google Maps and these others, which is there's a certain element of artificial intelligence in that, in terms of telling you which roads are busy and which ones aren't busy, and trying to work out the optimal path. And so we're already using it for driving, but the self-driving is a massive one as well, which seems it's been on the verge for a long time now of self-driving. It will reach a level at some point where it reaches the minimum viable product, and it's an interesting question and as to when that will be reached. Given the leaps and bounds we've seen and the number of extra people, it is highly likely, in my view, that this comes sooner rather than later. But I guess I've been a techno optimist on that front for a while now, and so I'm unsure about when it ticks through, but I do think we're close to that minimum viable stage. It's just a question of where we reach it. Education's seeing a massive change, so there's no more take-home assignments for people. So go write me an essay and on this, and I'll mark it. will now almost certainly need to be done in person for a lot of this stuff, because it is too easy to fake and too hard to tell what's been written through these.
Yeah, and Damo, I read something recently as well that the technology is actually really good at marking. So
Yes.
maybe teachers or people that have to grade things, they might be happy that part of their job is going to get outsourced to technology.
The robots marking the robots.
Yeah,
For the take-home
exactly.
assignments. Yes. But yeah, you're right. It's going to be there are certain certainly the what goes into a good answer, and other ones are likely as well. So education is going to go through a massive change, and there'll be and again, it's this big issue about, okay, does that mean we can have fewer teachers, or does it mean we can have, or do we end up with do we end up with models where we have teachers, our better teachers, doing web videos and or teaching large classes of people, and then AI tutors sort of running through and helping people with these? Is that going to be the best model, or is it going to be actually going to end up with teachers one teacher per 5 or one teacher per 10 now, aided by other things? So yeah, there's a whole bunch of things that, look, I don't know how that's going to go, but I think if you're going to pick one sector that is in for massive disruption over the next 5-10 years, I think the education sector is absolutely that place. And then I've got a few there: finance, fraud protection. I'll jump on because I'm going to rush through these a little bit because I really want to get to the investment side of it. Customer service, so the idea of chatbots and people answering questions. AI is excellent at that, because as much as you think your question is individual, chances are bigger organizations have seen that question 1,000 times, and really can be run through more intelligent chatbots. And we will see that, obviously in the past, a lot of those haven't been very good, but the improvements we're going to see from this chat GPT and large language models is going to be dramatic. And then healthcare. Healthcare is a big one. Diagnosis is massive in terms of these being able to understand the language and come back with a diagnosis or a range of different diagnoses. Again, is it going to replace doctors? No, I don't think it's going to replace doctors, but I do think it's going to make doctors a lot more productive, and it's going to give access, I guess, to specializations that they may not have, and in terms of being able to say, okay, well, I have a list of some of patients who have presented with these same 10 problems. Here's 20 different things it could be. Whereas the doctor themselves might have only been able to come up with half as many of those on their own. Whereas they can go, pretty immediately, right, here's the 20 different things. Okay, now what's the first test to wipe out as many of these as I can? Oh, okay, here's a test that will wipe out, it will either confirm or deny 10 of them. Great, let's run that test, and then we can, knock out the next 10. And now what's the next step from there? So I think that whole part is going to be significant. The wearable technology is a big one as well. Being able to just more data, being able to feed back to say, well, okay, here's something you never would have guessed, that we've looked at people and people that show this type of heart rate and this type of sleep pattern and this type of blood pressure or whatever. All of a sudden we can, something's happened that nobody would have noticed, but that's actually a warning sign, and we can preemptively do things. So so I think there's big changes coming within that, and certainly within research and development is already hitting in terms of what these can do. And I guess it's the tools to be able to do things that people wanted to be able to do, which is like go and run a test on whatever factor, or go and create all the different permutations and of things like that. Is the programming is becoming faster and easier and more accessible to more people, which means that the research and development can be done better.
Yeah, so, Damo, I think just quickly, I think with the explosion of data that's going on, and then the ability for this AI technology to actually analyze it and then create solutions from that analysis in real time, or almost real time, it's going to have profound changes for the whole of society.
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's I want you to keep thinking about it though as a productivity tool for real people behind this. So it's not a thing about saying, oh, my AI's just gone and worked out whatever it is, it's like somebody's actually asked the question, can you go and analyze all this, all this data coming out of these fitness watches and tell me what are the extra signs for a stroke, or what are the signs of people having a heart attack, and going and doing that analysis much more easily with this big data. And it was certainly possible before, but it might have taken somebody, hours and hours and hours to write it, whereas it might just be a random idea somebody has and go in. And now it's much easier to do the analysis. It's much easier to do the programming behind it. And they can come back with the answer and then, now update my software so that if this and this happens, send an alert to the user. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's making things more accessible, as opposed to completely replacing.
I understand that. At this moment in time, it's absolutely a productivity gain tool. But I mean, 10 years down the track, who knows where it's going to lead us if it keeps learning, keeps getting smarter, and sort of that exponential growth in itself. I'm just excited about it. I think it's amazing.
So countries most at risk, low-level services, India, Philippines. So if you're doing that programming, you're doing the customer service, I'd be worried about those countries in particular. We've got an issue about information asymmetry. So, are the rich going to get richer and the poor get poorer, potentially, or is this going to flatten things? I'm as yet undecided. I do think Russia is going to be cut out of a lot of this. And the question is, with China, quite possibly they're going to, I think systems will try and cut China out of a lot of it. We're already doing that in terms of chips and some of the latest technology. I do think China is already generating its own. Will it be able to keep up? Don't know. It'll be an interesting. It will be an interesting test. But there's one of the two most likely ways this goes is to one extreme. It's hard to see it ending up in the middle. I do think there's part with emerging markets where we either see that the technology gets taken and the IP gets kept in rich developed countries and applied to other right around the world, and at the detriment of emerging markets. Or the flip side is it enables emerging markets to use this and come up and come up that technology path themselves. I think I'm leaning more towards the first one, but I guess it's still early, hard to tell. And manufacturing, I do think there's going to be cost benefits in terms of manufacturing. A lot of this AI can just analyze so much more data, so much more quickly and easily, that improvements in processes and things like that are going to improve. And a good analogy that I was listening to, in terms of the way some people talking about this was saying, when you had originally a lot of factories were sort of built around steam engines, pre-electricity. You built around these, so the factory was actually often a 2 or 3 story factory, all built around this big steam engine sitting in the middle, and everything had to be close to the engine, and how do we run various pulleys and things off this engine to make our process efficient. As electricity came in, the first step people did was they just replaced the steam engine and kept the factory the same, which was helpful in terms of more efficient and cheaper and things like that. But it didn't actually change the overall process. As the next step came, was people actually went, well, I no longer need to have a 3-story factory. Actually, I can design this huge, long factory where we put stuff in at one end and it works its way through a process and comes out the other end in a much more efficient way to produce it, because now we don't have to work around this constraint of having to have everything near this steam engine sitting in the middle. And that's where we picked up these massive productivity gains. And that's the part where a lot of this artificial intelligence will really add to. And I think manufacturing is one place in particular. We're going to see a lot of benefits coming out of that. So yes, do you want to talk? I might throw to you for the passive, and then we'll talk about the key investment questions about who benefits.
We'll be back again shortly. If you like what you're hearing but want a low-cost passive option, Nucleus Wealth is the first to offer passive direct indexing in Australia. The first generation of passive investing was index funds. The next gen was ETFs. Now direct indexing is here with significantly more customization and control. The benefit of direct indexing is you can add or subtract investment themes, and we have almost 100 different options to choose from. For example, you could buy an international share direct index portfolio that excludes fossil fuels and arms manufacturers and has a tilt towards cybersecurity and cloud computing. Alternatively, you could buy a portfolio with no screens and an extra exposure to nuclear power and defense contractors. You can find out more at nucleuswealth.com. Now back to the show.
So the key investment question is, who is going to benefit the most from this? So there's basically four different parties that we're looking at that are going to benefit. One is the people with the technology. So is it going to be your OpenAI and your Microsoft, your Google, that are all going to benefit the most from this as being the producers of this AI technology? And are they going to keep most of the benefits for themselves? Now, my expectation is no, that won't be the case. Look, it might be, but I think there's, the signs already are that this is going to be distributed as something free and or close to free, and the benefits will accrue. The benefit to these producers of having more users on there outweighs the feeling that they want to keep all the benefits for themselves. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if you've got the greatest AI engine right now, and you're like, I'm going to charge everyone $50 a month for it because it's fantastic, it's way better than everyone else's, and it's worth so much more than all the rest, that it'll be worth it for people to pay that $50 a month. Now, you'll get a bunch of people paying that $50 a month to start with, but the person who on the other side sticking it out for free with something that might be 80% of yours, but you've got 1 million users using yours and they've got 1 billion users using theirs, is that what you'll probably find is that theirs improves so much faster that it then leapfrogs yours, and you've only got 1 million people asking you questions, and so you slow down. And so that's the part where I think that for all these AI producers, they're going to be trying to, it's going to be a race to get as many people as they can and to be the biggest and the baddest, and with a view similar to a search engine. The more people searching for you, the more you know about what people want to search, and the more you can provide the right answers. I think that's the race we're in. And so I don't think the producers of the software are going to be the ones. I think they will certainly benefit, but they're not going to take all the benefit from it. It is going to be spread back to companies. So then they get the three different groups that could benefit from this. So one is, it could be the companies itself. So the company could basically say, okay, I've just made myself more efficient because I've managed to sack half my service staff, and I've cleared out a third of my IT department, and with exactly the same productivity as before, or even more productive than before, and I've managed to get rid of all this staff. And so now I can keep all my sales the same, and I can make a much larger profit on everything I make. Now there's some, so that may or may not be the case. The next group is the wages. So now, rather than there being, 5 different programmers in a team, one or two of them are doing most of the work, and the rest are doing all the coding to all the grunt work, is that we end up with just the 1 or 2 doing all the work. Now, does that mean that those guys can now demand much higher salaries, or in your legal case, I've got 1 lawyer now doing the work of what used to be 1 lawyer and 3 assistants. Now he's only got 1 lawyer and doesn't need any assistants, or 1 assistant. Does that mean that lawyer can now put up his fees and get a higher wage because of it, or do we end up in prices? Is that all this productivity just means that all these people can offer this at much lower price, and so we have lower inflation, we have disinflation as all these productivity gains all get competed away in terms of prices. So I think it's a mix of the 3. And so I think the first one is unlikely in terms of the AI producers, although there certainly will be benefits there. I just think, it's not unlikely. It's highly likely the AI producers are going to make money. I just think as a proportion of the total money available and the total productivity gains available, they're going to make this tiny, tiny, tiny sliver, which is going to be extremely worth it to them. And then it's a question, industry by industry, which ones get the profit margins, which ones get the wages, and which ones get the prices. And so I'll jump to the question of the week, and then we'll get into that investment views about which of those is the most likely, Sam.
So as Damo said, now we've got the question of the week. This is for viewers to have some discussion in the comment section over the coming days. So the question for this week is, which will benefit most from AI productivity gains? A, higher wages, B, higher profit margins, or C, lower prices? So feel free to post your thoughts and engage with us and some of the viewers over the coming days. And we have had a question come through from Jerry. They're asking, do you think AI will affect the job vacancy rate in a way that decreases the demand for jobs and negate the federal government's need for increasing immigration, with need in inverted commas?
Yeah, well, no is a short answer, because it depends on how you define the need. I guess I think about the need in terms of Australia. The need for higher immigration is basically, we need higher immigration because the businesses which are helping to fund our government and helping to support or fund our political parties, at least, want more people. If you're a big supermarket, you want more people because it means you've already got the good locations. You can sell more to more people. The idea that I've seen a bit of stuff out recently about saying, oh, we need all these extra people in so we can build more houses because we haven't got enough people to build houses. And it's like, just a minute, you need more people to build more houses for the people that are coming in. Like you're stuck in this circular part where you're like, but you do need more people to come in and build for building companies, which want to make more profits, and they're obviously big donators to a lot of political parties. And so, I guess from that perspective, the need at the moment is not really a need; it's a want. And I don't see these changes making that go away. But hopefully, we'll get at some stage. We could have political people decide that flooding the country with more people than what we can handle is not the right strategy. But and to put that in context as well, I do want to say I am a big believer in immigration, and I just think there's a level. Like, should we bring in 10 million people a year into Australia? No, we obviously can't handle 10 million people a year. We haven't got the infrastructure for it. Should we bring in zero? No, we should bring in. We should allow people to come in and go out as. And there's a point somewhere where you have enough infrastructure and enough. You can handle the growth in terms of people, and I think the levels which we're running at now are extreme, and you're seeing rent growth and all these other things because we've decided to bring in more people than what the system can handle. And so anyway, different that we could spend a whole topic on that.
That's another show.
Yeah.
So investment outlook now, Damo.
Yes. So I actually might start with the first one. The idea of the quality stocks is I'm going to start with the quality versus value. And what I mean by this is, if you have a monopoly or if you have an oligopoly where there's only a few players, that's where I think you get the benefit in terms of these. The most obvious benefit in that you can keep your prices where they are, your costs will fall away, and there's not pressure for you to cut your prices to come back to the lower levels. And you're unlikely to see in the big oligopolies, everyone trying to compete other way. So if you were a Coles or a Woolworths and you're putting in more checkouts to stop people to let people do it themselves, or you're putting in systems where that to help pack your shelves faster and AI systems to recognize your logistics and improve your systems like that. Do I think if you're a relatively cozy oligopoly in Australia that you'll be able to increase your margins? Yeah, it's a reasonable chance. Rather than say what I'd call something like a value stock, where say it's car manufacturers or something like that, where there's a lot of big players out there. There's a lot of competition. AI might mean that you need fewer engineers, you need fewer people on your manufacturing, and that can lower your cost of production. But do I think that they'll try and compete that way with price? Yeah, absolutely. I think there'll be car companies out there that will go, I've got a car that was costing me $10,000 to produce and I was selling it for 20. Now it's only costing me $8,000 to produce. Now I'm going to try and sell it for 16,000 because I've reduced I've reduced my input costs, as opposed to other industries where they'll look at that and go, well, if I'm selling something for 20,000 and I've managed to reduce my costs from 10 to 8, I'll just pocket that extra $2,000 as a profit. So this is the idea of quality stocks and companies that can maintain pricing power versus the value stocks, I think, are going to suffer more. So that's one part of it. There is a big part in terms of benefits to your big technology, your cloud computing, your chip makers. Yeah, there's some of those. I'd be careful about which ones, though. I do think there's an element of there are cloud computing plays that I think will benefit from this. There's also some companies that aren't that technology savvy, like they're sort of relying on older technology and older, quite large. Actually, how can I put it? Put it a different way. There's people who rely on having warm bodies and billing on those warm bodies. So consulting type companies who basically go, you have an IT problem. I'm going to throw 500 people at it for a year, and I'm going to charge on top, whatever their ongoing charge is plus extra, and that's going to solve this problem. And if you want to get it done faster, we'll throw 1,000 people at it, but it won't double the speed of it. It'll make it potentially even go slower, but maybe it'll improve it by 10%. I think those types of companies aren't the ones I'd want to be investing in, because I do think there's going to be a lot of productivity gains, and you're going to find that smaller IT companies can compete better with some of the bigger ones now. So I guess within the technology, there's the big tech ones who will own this and will be one of the whether it's a Google or a Microsoft or whatever it is that actually own this artificial intelligence and one of the bigger players within that, or the cloud computing ones, the ones that are supplying the best tools, and not the ones that are out there just throwing people at this problem. Healthcare and high service cost businesses are another one. So if you have, and this one's look at healthcare, I think there's a lot of efficiencies healthcare companies are going to get out of this. There is a little bit more. There will be a little bit more push and pull between who gets the benefit of this. If you have high service cost businesses and you can reduce your service costs, you're most likely going to benefit from this, in that your servicing costs, your artificial intelligence will let it do things that it couldn't have otherwise done. If you're paying your employees a lot, so for example, doctors, there will be a pushback, or even software engineers, there'll be a pushback as to how much of it ends up back with the software engineers versus the companies running these high service cost businesses. So it's not a blanket, but it's as a broad brush. There's certainly ones I'd be trying to target. The defense industry, there's going to be a race, or there already is a race. We're already in a race of drones, artificial intelligence. I've spoken about it before as being a Cambrian explosion. It is. We've reached a certain level where there's going to be a lot of money spent on the defense sector, and so I think there's a big place there for people in that to reap more money from the desire for governments to keep up. And I've got a question mark on interest rate sensitive stocks. So if this means that it ends up in lower prices, which is I think a pretty reasonable, that in some extent, as we're talking between companies with higher profit margins, companies with lower price, companies offering lower prices for their goods, and companies paying more to staff, more to the higher value staff. If you took a view that in aggregate, it's across the whole economy, it's going to be spread between those. That means lower inflation. That means there's interest rate sensitive stocks will benefit at the margin, but it will matter case by case as to whether which companies can keep those profits and which ones have to pay it back to staff. In terms of companies that suffer, spoke about value stocks, intermediaries. So if your job is to take something from somebody and sell it to somebody else with nothing in between, I would, that's effectively, the internet spent a lot of time disintermediating a lot of companies. If you've got companies that are still left in that space, I would be concerned as well about those, about how much more disintermediation is going to happen. So travel stocks, for example, if you're a travel agent, there's still a few of these. They moved between a high service cost business to the internet could do a lot of that. AI is going to be able to do even more of that. There's if you're within intermediaries where you're basically say logistics is your job is to aggregate and buy a bunch of stuff from people and then wholesale it on to others. I think a lot of this AI will make the whole process of sourcing and supplying and logistics and everything like that a lot easier. You're at risk of getting your margin squeezed by bigger players on either side of you that can use the AI and use these more efficient tools to basically get rid of you. I spoke about broadly competitive industries. So basically, the higher the competition in the industry, the more likely these productivity gains are going to get competed away. And then that last one of disruptable industries. So anything where, if your job was you had copywriters and you're writing content for people's websites, then I would be worried about that as an ongoing role. I think we ran through a bunch of the different tasks which a lot of the AI could do, and the different sectors. So if you're say for example driving, the question about self-driving and those types of ones, how much of that is really the core business, and so is that going to get disintermediated away, and can you end up being squeezed out if you're sort of sitting in an industry that effectively you own a bunch of drivers, and collecting margins on those. And so so that's sort of the big picture. Keeping in mind that we are sort of relatively negative on the outlook of a lot of things at the moment, and these are sort of broad trends that are going to occur over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. You may or may not want to be investing in this straight away. I think there's some of these elements might fall first if we go through an economic downturn and a recession, which we think is highly likely. But it is a matter of having these on your shopping list of stocks to buy. Some of them you might be able to buy already. But having your list of the ones that you do want to pick up if we continue to see this economic downturn.
Yeah, excellent. And I just want to let all the viewers know as well, if you do like this new AI technology and you want to be able to invest in it or participate in it going forward, across all our portfolios, our active and passive portfolios, we do have these tilts where you can add in certain sectors or you can invest in them just specifically. So we do have a robotics and an AI tilt. And also a cloud computing tilt, if you think those sort of complement each other, if you think they're positioned to do well in the future. So yeah, Damo, thank you so much. I mean, it's a game changer technology. There's obviously lots of implications for business. If there's some of the lower level jobs are going to get cut out, that's obviously got lots of implications for society as a whole. And no doubt this is going to be one of those topics that comes up regularly on Nucleus Wealth Investment Insights. So thanks for sharing your perspective, Damo.
Thanks, Sam.
So if you enjoy our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel now. Click the bell below to make sure you don't miss out on any special episodes and future content. We do put out a lot of other content other than the podcast. Damien's been writing a series of articles on the banking crisis, and I put out an article this week about a transition to retirement tax saving strategy. So you can check those out on our website and subscribe on the homepage, nucleuswealth.com. Like the video now, and if you know of anyone that might get some value out of today's episode, please share it with them. We do welcome your feedback on this podcast, especially in regards to suggestions for future topics. If you do have any ideas, please drop it in the comments section below or send us an email at contact@nucleuswealth.com. And if you'd like to look at the slides in more detail, we'll post them in the show notes this afternoon, and you can view these at nucleuswealth.com/webinars. So for myself, Damien, and the rest of the team at Nucleus Wealth, thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.